Right, what's the basis of a coaching relationship, particularly from an embodiment point of view? Where to begin? Coaching relationship is a lot of what results in the success of coaching. It's not so much someone's got a clever technique or a particular approach. I've seen good approaches from many different schools, trained by many different people. For me, I know my experience as a coach over the last 15, 20 years, that it's the connection I have with someone. So what we're really looking at here is trust and rapport. Yeah. So trust comes from different areas. Some is just like doing what you say, right? They trust that you're reliable as a coach all the time. Some of it comes through the body. Yeah. Some of that's based on just people's prejudices. Maybe you don't like people in blue t-shirts or something, right? Some of it's those based on your embodiment right now in the moment. Are you giving off those signals of, I don't like the word safety because I think it's a little bit overused, but those signals of, you know what, I'm not a violent person, I'm not going to hurt you. Of course, we're always judging. Sometimes you hear this like no judgment. Well, that in itself is a judgment. We're always judging. That's just what the mind does. But certainly I think it can be overly judgmental, and that those signals are given through the body. Yeah, if I'm kind of judging you, if I'm hostile in some way, from an embodiment point of view, if I'm in a fight-flight response. I just had a cold shower, I'm quite activated, but I don't think I'm in aggressive mode right now. And hopefully as you're, even watching the video of this, there's no sense of being scared of me. Yeah. Now, again, someone with a beard and glasses attacked you yesterday. That's the conditioning. But from my own embodiment right now, I feel like I'm in a pretty activated from my cold shower, but fairly relaxed, fairly open, fairly happy, certainly not hostile. Yeah. If I came to you really stressed, or I don't know, I just came out of the gym early and I was super pumped up, you might misinterpret that. Yeah, when we're stressed, we're in that fight-flight response. Often that doesn't build trust. So our regulations, from an embodiment point of view, our regulation as coaches is massively important. Also just in terms of like charisma, right? So you want to be, as a coach, somewhat likable. I don't have to have them love me, but somewhat likable certainly helps with the connection, and a certain amount of authority. So we've got warmth and power, likability and authority. They're both embodied. If I was like, oh, hi, I'm going to help you. This is my YouTube video. Not enough power, not enough authority. Equally, if I was like, whoa, all power. I am the great coach Mark, the great dictator of coaching. Too much power, not enough openness, likability, connection. Of course, there are personal preferences, differences. You might not like my face or blah, blah, blah. Men or women, whatever. But the basic ideas of warmth and power, of warmth or care and authority, that's what builds trust. Okay? So yes, over time, does your behavior match your words? Are you ethical? Of course, this is a huge trust builder. Through embodiment though, is there warmth? That's the inside. Is there power? Is there authority embodied? And again, being anxious doesn't convey that. Right? So it not only means you might be perceived as hostile, like a fight response, but a flight response or a freeze response is low status. Hi, I'm your coach. If I'm in that mode, it's very different than how I am now, which is, fairly energized, but relaxed, let's say. The energy gives that up regulation. That's important. We're not just down regulating with the yoga voice as coaches. Yeah, so trust is built through up and down regulation, being able to connect with someone. Obviously, presence is a key part of that. If I'm, checking my phone and ignoring you, then we're not going to build connection. We're not going to build rapport. Full presence. Yeah, that could be too much, like too starey. Where's the camera lens? Too starey. Some kind of hippie coaches do that too much. But generally, full presence is really important. Obviously, ethics is a part of this, that I'm giving off signals of kindness and care, but also that I am genuinely, not just body language, right? There's a kindness, there's an ethics to my being. Things like confidentiality can really build that container where the client's like, you know what, that gives me a bit more freedom to speak. Again, I think the word safety is a bit overused here. In that coaching is not really a safe space in the sense of like you feel totally happy the whole time. Some people use safety to mean I never feel threatened or challenged. Well, actually, a good coach is challenging as well as supporting. This is the yin and the yang side of things. In terms of the coaching relationship, you need both. You need a coach that can also tell you like, hey, I think this is bullshit, or hold you accountable and then challenge you. It's like, okay, you said you were going to do this, you didn't, what's going on? Doesn't need to be aggressive, but there's a certain courage, a certain challenge involved in that. as a coach, as well as, of course, a sort of more, parental archetype of care and support, good listening, etc. Okay, let me look at my notes here. Confidentiality, I mentioned, trust and rapport. It's often you see these like tricks to rapport, like, mirroring. If they do this, I do this. I think that's bullshit. I think people pick up on that, and much better, instead of giving off fake signals of rapport, to actually look at the person and go, what's likable in this person? And, I want being in touch with my sense of service to the person, and then just being empathic. Now, if you're in your body, if you're relaxed, it's easier to empathize. Fight or flight gets in the way of empathy, but genuine connection, genuine empathy, rather than pretending with some tricks to build fake rapport. Okay, contracting. Yeah, so goal setting, contracting. A lot of coaching is around goal setting. So doing that with the client, it's like, hey, I'm going to help you achieve your goals. This is the point. This is what coaching is. Contracting can be verbal, more like explicit. Is often implicit. If they've had coaching before, a lot of that might be obvious. It's a good question, actually, when you first start with someone, do you have any coaching before? Because it might set expectations. I like to verbally contract on the first session. I might say, hey, is it okay if I interrupt you sometimes? For some clients, that's so helpful for them and for me. We'll talk about confidentiality. We'll talk about what happens if they turn up late for a session. The session, for example, doesn't go on late. It stops at the agreed time. Some have the expectation that it will go on late. What happens if they cancel within 24 or 48 hours? They pay anyway. Basic contracting stuff. Is it okay if I do X? Hey, I'm an embodied coach. I work with the body. I may give you a little bit of homework every week. Are you okay with that? I tell a lot of jokes and sometimes tell stories. Are you cool with that? This is my style. Tends to be kind of a mixture of humor and challenging. Does that suit you? So this is like, it's a conversation. What questions do you have about coaching? As I said, have you had coaching before? They may have an expectation that it's going to be more like counseling. And I will explicitly say, hey, I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to ask you about, your trauma in your past. I am trauma aware, but we're not going to talk about your parents. And also, we're going to be looking at your goals. If you just want to turn up and have someone listen to you for half an hour, that's not me. That's a counselor. That's a different thing. They'll listen sympathetically. My job is practical stuff, helping you get somewhere in life. Is that cool? Does the expectation meet the reality of what I can offer? I'm sometimes surprised at the wild levels of expectation. Often they're bringing something in from another kind of coaching, or often therapy, right? So being clear of what we're doing, what we're not doing. So I like to do that verbally, all the practicalities. There's some good contracts online. Look up, just Google coaching contracts. I used to do those in my early days. I used to find them helpful. Now it's a bit more casual, but some people like those, and there's advantages to that, right? It can feel a bit like legalistic or formal to sign a coaching agreement. But other places it's good because you can go, hey, look, you did actually sign this to say, hey, you would do this. Yeah, and it could be about coachability as well. Like, what does it mean to be coachable? So I think a really good conversation to have, either ahead of coaching or beginning of coaching, is here's what I expect from you. I expect for you to turn up on time in a pretty good state. It has to be a 10 out of 10, but not totally exhausted, for example. I expect you to be coachable. You don't have to do anything I say. In fact, I'm never going to tell you what to do. However, I need you to be open to my suggestions to give things a try. Are you okay with that? And that actually establishes some status. And it's like, look, you're not just a customer here. I need you to be coachable. Here's what I mean by that. Some examples, some stories, somebody who wasn't coachable. You've all seen that guy who comes into a workshop with their arms crossed and doesn't want to learn anything. Coaching's all about learning, Have you been sent by HR? That might be a conversation. Is there a third party you have to report to, or I have to report to? Does that break the confidentiality? There's a load of stuff we could talk about. But those kind of, commissioning people. Often there's a commissioning conversation, like say a HR manager or a parent will say, can you coach this person? And I'll say yes if they agree to it, because otherwise there's no real consent. If there's no real consent, there's no real buy-in to the coaching, right? Getting that buy-in early is like, okay, why do you want this coaching? What's the change you want? Is there a real enthusiasm for it? Sometimes you have to do a bit of what's called motivational interviewing. It's like, what will happen if this is successful? Motivating towards, and what will happen if you don't do this? What will happen if you don't show up or don't give this your all? Away from motivation, so what they don't want as well. Both can be helpful. Okay, so contracting, agreement, goal setting, accountability, setting that up early as an expectation that it's not just like a nice colluding friend. Yeah, non-directiveness. I think this is key, that you'd say to them, I'm never going to tell you what to do. You've always got a choice. That's a big one in embodied coaching. You've always got a choice here. You don't have to do anything I say. And people like that. There's a sense of freedom in that, which is empowering. Yeah, flow of the session is important. Like we talk about U-curve or the seasons model. That I think is part of trust, is not going in too hard, too quick, and also putting them back together again at the end. Like if you want a good coaching relationship, make sure that when they go back to work, they can talk to their boss or pick up their kids or whatever they've got to do. That's part of building trust, is that, you know, even if it goes deep and maybe it's emotional and there's challenges, that, at the end of it, they're in one piece. I think that's an ethical responsibility as well. Laying out the ethics at the beginning can also be helpful. Like, hey, just so you know, we can't have any business relationships while this is going on. Whatever the other, confidentiality I mentioned, other ethical agreements. As an embodiment coach, as I said, there's a lot in there that's embodied that maybe coaches that just try and do this verbally don't get. The main ones we have are consent, calibration, and capacity, 3 ethical principles in anyone who trains with me. So it's like always making sure there's consent for stuff, making that really clear. I'll say who's the boss or who's in charge, make sure they know that. Calibration is what's too much. This is an ethical principle, but you will break trust. You like go, right, death meditation, session 1, first 5 minutes. Whoa, there's a cycles issue there, but that's a calibration issue. What's too much? That's going to be different with different clients, different cultures, etc. And capacity, do they actually have capacity for coaching? Occasionally people come exhausted. I'm like, hey man, look, you look wiped out. Let's just cancel this one. Or like, you know what? They don't really have the capacity for too deep a session. Or they turn up drunk. I've had that once. What else? People come from conscious dance a bit high. They might not really have the capacity to really choose at that point. There's olden states, all sorts of things. Right, the 3 C's, but consent, calibration, capacity less often. Whew, lost there.